This is, as I mentioned, the 7th annual meeting of the American Diploma Project Network. When we started, the states that joined made a commitment to do 4 major things, all of which focused on aligning expectations of high school graduation with the demands that students will face after they complete high school. We asked them to align their standards with the demands of college and work, to require students to take a curriculum that actually delivered those standards. We asked them to build assessments into their high school system that actually measured those standards, and that students would give signals to post-secondary institutions in particular as to whether students had met those college-ready standards. And we asked states to take on the challenge of creating accountability indicators for the K-12 system that reflected this college and career-ready agenda. In some areas, there has been tremendous progress. First of all, college and career readiness, I think, arguably is a national priority. Now, when we started, it was an idea that a small number of states had. I think we've changed the national discussion about this. 48 states have adopted college and career ready standards now. Most of them are states that adopted the Common Core, but others, such as Virginia and Texas, have created their own really quite strong college and career ready standards, so they've responded in a different way. About 22 states have raised their high school graduation requirements. There's now major efforts underway to create assessments that are aligned to college and career readiness. The accountability work has been proceeding a bit more slowly. Last year, when Achieve put out a 50-state survey on this, Texas was the only state that had adopted sort of a full range of accountability policies that reflected college and career readiness. So the point is, there's been some real progress. It's been a bit uneven, easier in some areas than others, and there's lots of work to do. But what I'd like to do is start out this conversation by asking several of my colleagues on the panel to just reflect on what have we learned from the last 6 or 7 years of work. Lillian, I'd like to start with you, if I could, and kind of get your take on this, and we'll come to Stan. You're going to be next, just to give you a warning on that.
Right. Thank you. First, to reiterate what was said by the board and many of our colleagues from around the room this morning, as Mike kicked us off, Delaware was truly a recipient of some great work from Achieve, and I will attest to the fact publicly too that we would not be where we are but for the great leadership from Achieve in helping us come to terms with what college and career readiness actually means. I think the most salient overarching message sent to us and that we've learned as a state through the leadership and under the auspices of our P20 Council, which included an eclectic group, those that you have described this morning, is that we have got to stop helping our children graduate from high school because we have our credits and we know how many credits they need. We had to move away from helping them graduate from high school to helping them prepare to be college and or career ready. And as Mike has said, we've been more definitive about college readiness than we have about career. And then beyond that, helping them to see that college is just the vehicle to a more sustainable, viable life. That we're not just preparing you to get into college and then so what? We're preparing you to get into college ready to succeed so that after college, everyone can be a viable citizen. One of the things we've talked about this morning that really makes a lot of sense, and it was almost a no-brainer, where were we and what were we thinking, is that not only did we have to have rigor, it needed to be aligned. When Achieve did the survey of our graduation requirements, they also looked at our higher ed, our institutions of higher education, and we weren't even aligned with them. So we were graduating students without any real rigor and or specificity around what those credits meant. So for example, the 2 premier universities in our state require their students to have Algebra 1 geometry, Algebra 2 or something equivalent to that, All we were requiring in our graduation requirements was up to Algebra 1, even though we had 3 credits. So the specificity that we put into now requiring that every child has to complete up to Algebra 2 has them ready to at least be admitted to their own state colleges and or universities. The big, huge piece, and this is a conversation that we're having all around the country, is the focus on the senior year. And as we all know, we were having students who would show up and take 1 course or 2 courses, and that was it for the senior year. And the research indicates that if we really want them to go in college and or career ready, they need to have rigor in that year. So one of the things that we adopted from our Achieve discussion and leadership was that not only would our students have 4 years of math, 1 was required in the senior year, and that began with this year's graduating class. Every senior who graduated from a high school in Delaware this year had to have a year's worth of math in their senior year. And did we get pushback at that? On the beginning of the year, they forgot all about that. So people were scrambling to do virtual classes and other kinds of things. The second piece that we've heard about this morning that we've really implemented is our districts are, the locals can always have higher education requirements than the state. We're just the floor. They are the ceiling, and many of them do have higher graduation requirements. And so many of them required world language, but on the books at the state level, we did not require world languages. So starting with this year's freshman class, the freshman class of FY12, everyone who graduates in 12-15 must have at least 2 years of world language. And then finally, one thing that we are moving to is an end of course assessments at the high school instead of, like the legislator talked about, that one-time 10th grade test, then pretty much that's it and they walk away. We're moving to end of course assessments. In order to do that and meet the participation rates that we must at the federal level, we have to require certain courses. So we are requiring biology, we're requiring English 2, we're requiring Algebra 2 or an equivalent, integrated math or whatever, and we are requiring all 3 years of laboratory science, and biology is the one that they will take there. That will be with the FY13 freshmen, which class of 2016. So since Achieve came into Delaware in 2005 and helped us pull together our review of ourselves and take a hard look, we have not only listened, but our entire state through our P20 Council and our high school graduation committee has embraced, we have embraced those offerings and we have implemented them. They are now in policy.
Thank you, Lillian. So for Delaware has been a real prime example of a state where higher ed and K-12 came together to work on and persevere on a policy agenda over a number of years of time, even as there have been changes in leadership. And you've really gotten a lot done in that short period. Stan, let me turn to you. Stan is the head of Complete College America. When we started the network 7 years ago, Stan was the state higher education officer in Indiana. So as you look at this, as you look back from a higher ed, from a post-secondary perspective, what are the big lessons that you've seen?
Well, I guess the lesson that I want to share actually has a double edge to it. We even preceding 2005, we worked with Achieve, and so over a decade, and we really took the Mike Cohen playbook and did everything that Coach Cohen said to do. And so we had a core curricula, Core 40. We had a standards in math and English that we had rated by Fordham and by AFT and by Achieve, and they were among the top in the country. And we participated in the Algebra 2 assessment, and we had our own assessments linked to the new standards. And so we really literally implemented the whole agenda. And so this was a few years ago now, but so it was a great surprise to me when I got a call from our community college who said, well, Stan, your plan's not working. And I said, what? My plans always work, so how could this possibly be? So I said, well, what do you mean? They said, well, you've encouraged us, the community college, to recruit students directly out of high school and not let them end up 24 years old and showing up at the community college, but to get a head start on that. And we've effectively done that. We've got a huge increase in our high school going to college population. But essentially, we're recruiting them right into remedial classes. And I said, oh, really? So we went back and we looked at all the data, and at the community college, 60% of all their new starts start in remedial classes. And I thought, okay, so let's look at just the ones that came right out of high school. 60% of all the ones that came right from high school started in remedial classes, essentially taking the classes that they just passed. Now, it is true that not all of them had the core curricula, or not all of them obviously had passed the test, but a number of them had. It's part of our work with Complete College America. We're now working with 29 states, and we're collecting data from all those states. And I've given this speech, I don't know how many times, but I could be in any state and have given this speech to say exactly what I said to you, is that 60% of those students starting at a community college in your state are right out of high school started in remedial classes. And it would be true, except those people that come to me and say, actually, it's higher. Like El Paso, it's 90%. There's a number of places, Chicago, it's 90%. A lot of the inner cities are higher. It's also true that it's not just the community colleges, but most of your open access institutions will have 20, 30% of them start in remedial classes, your regional four-year universities. And so it wasn't surprising. Mitch Chester talked about the fact that a third of those in Massachusetts start in remedial classes. I got a call from Massachusetts about a month ago. They had their data that we'd sent them, and they said, Stan, this can't be. Similar call. This can't be. We're Massachusetts. We have high standards. We have smart kids. We have Mitch Chester. And we still have 60% of our students going to community colleges starting remedial classes, and a third of all the kids. So I don't have answers to those questions, except the double edge of this is these students are going to college. Those of you like myself that have been preaching the message of you need to go to college, the message has been delivered and received. That's happening. But many of them are ending up in non-credit bearing courses. And so that's why this agenda is so terribly important. The other edge of this is it's also why it's so terribly challenging. This is not a perfect system. And even with better standards and better tests, we're going to need the support learning mechanisms, better teachers, better curricula, to make this all work together and to move the whole system forward. So it's an important thing to do, and Achieve is really a strong vehicle to do that. But we've also got to recognize the challenges, that we don't put too much emphasis on a test or too much on the standards, but that it's the whole package.
Thank you, Stan. So I just want to alert you to the fact that the rest of the panelists here, Rich Cases from Jobs for the Future, Kaya Henderson, the CEO of the DC Public Schools, and Mike Casserly from the Council of Great City Schools, have not been recipients directly of assistance from Achieve. So when they tell you things that are not working there, it's clearly not our fault. just want to be clear about that. Rich, you've been working at Jobs for the Future at the intersection of secondary and post-secondary, particular focus on community colleges, but also on early college. So in that context, and given what you just heard about the gap between advances in policy and stagnation in performance, what have you learned that we ought to be thinking about?
Right, so Mike is right.
We've
said
never
about
helped you.
our relationship to Achieve, but I still want to say that it's amazing what has been accomplished and what Achieve has enabled states to accomplish in the past few years. I think starting from a sense of accomplishment today is the right place to start. Of course, the next day and a half is about all the challenges and all the unanswered questions, and that's also the right place to go. It seems like a long time ago that Achieve and JFF and a number of other national organizations were encouraged and pushed by the Gates Foundation to work with 8 states in a college and career-ready policy institute. At the time, there was a sense of, okay, well, we got to deal with standards, assessment, accountability, and data, curriculum and instruction, innovation incentives, but we don't really know what that policy set should look like. And if you think that was only, 7 years ago? It might have been 15 years ago from what it feels like, but it was not that long ago, and the progress that has been made by people in this room, by the national organizations that have kind of aligned their own work, with the help of, and also, you know, with some help, this may not be fashionable to say in all audiences, but with the help of the federal government over the years as well, to drive the college and career readiness agenda to where it is today. I think it's really, really impressive. If, you know, in a lot of the discussion about 9/11, 10th anniversary, there's a talk of a lost decade. I don't think that in the area of college and career-ready policies and the progress in education reform, you can talk about a lost decade. But we are at a point a little bit like in Philip Roth's Portnoy's Complaint. How many have read Philip Roth's Portnoy's Complaint? Okay, you admit it, that's good. You know, so he goes on for like 350 pages of this, you know, kind of pouring out all his neuroses and, you know, in this riotous kind of id gone wild kind of a book. And then the last line is reserved for the psychiatrist who comes in and says, so now perhaps we might begin. That's kind of what, you know, you feel like you could be saying right now about all the heavy lifting that's been done, but now we have to also begin, and well, each year we could say this, we have to begin with deepening the implementation and figuring out how does this get traction for kids in schools, in districts, in states. I want to actually, if I can, highlight 3 lessons. One lesson is, it's already been mentioned, but a lesson about where there has been a great deal of progress in the past few years. One is a kind of lesson that I think is about where we're on hold, and one is where there's a fear and a risk of backsliding. So where's there been an incredible amount of progress, it's in what Mitchell Chester and our colleague from Hawaii mentioned about the relationship of K-12 and post-secondary and the integration of the work together between those two systems. When we think back to the early days of ADP, the teams were very K-12 focused. And over the past few years, reasonably so, because college and career readiness is about college and career readiness so that you can move on, you know, you've increased the participation of higher ed in the teams and in the work, and it shows and it's important. And it's critical, actually, to the ultimate success and traction on the ground. Because one of the things that we've learned from our work in early college, high schools, and work with districts that are moving towards bringing more college and the high school experiences to students, and in our work on developmental ed reform through Achieving the Dream and other community college-focused initiatives, it is that on the ground, silo-busting, cross-system collaboration, getting people speaking the same language, looking at the policies and where they don't connect, figuring out how to drive that alignment, both through state policy, but also on the ground through the thoughtful interaction of K-12 and post-secondary folks. That's really critical to, I think, institutionalizing the kinds of changes we want to see. I want to give let me give a couple of quick examples on where I see progress. So we work with early college high schools. There are 200 or more around the country. This is not a policy issue per se, but let me just talk for a second about a recent survey, 2011 survey of data from 181 of these schools, 5,000 graduates, 70% of them non-white, 56% free and reduced lunch, 39% first-generation college goers. 22.5% of those graduates graduated with an AA degree. In 75% of those schools, 100% of the students graduated with some college credit. Now that's a pretty good indication of college and career readiness. And so how do we think about moving from individual schools that can do that to districts that can do that can bring college experience, college knowledge, college navigation skills into the high school so that the momentum that you need to cross that barrier is established. So if you go from a school, you can then go to districts. You can go to an El Paso. You can go to Northern Virginia, where the community colleges in both those districts, in both those communities, have taken a major role in organizing the kind of collaboratives that you need to reach back into the high schools, to do early assessments, to use dual enrollment creatively, to use state policy around college in the high school and early college creatively, to use policies around early assessment, giving the assessment test in high school, and helping students get college ready before they make it to the remedial classes that Stan's talking about. So, and the central role of the community college reaching back to K-12, I think, is what's noteworthy in those cases. And then you can also take that up to the state level. I don't know how many of you know about Florida's post-secondary education readiness test. And there's an article in Change this summer by Judy Bilski from Florida Department of Education about the process that they use to have the college and the high school faculty and staff really work through what are we talking about here? What should our new assessment look like? An assessment tied to the common link, aligned with the Common Core, an assessment that can be used for diagnostic purposes in the community college, an assessment that links high school, that is the same assessment can be used in high school and for entry into the community college system. So major activity. So I think that whole area is a major area of improvement and strength. Two things I want to say briefly, because I have overstayed or overgone my limit here, but the issue where I think we're about where we were 5 or 6 years ago is I was at an ADP meeting 5 or 6 years ago on a panel with Gary Hoaglander. He's going to be here either today or tomorrow, on the question of career readiness. What does it mean? Is it the same or different from college readiness? How do you think about that? How do you avoid tracking? How do you specify what career readiness means? I think we've made great leaps in the analytics about labor market information, about what pays off and what doesn't pay off. I don't think we've made very much progress yet on what the policy set is that gets you to career readiness that is not tracked, that is not second class. Third point, and here's the one where I think we run the risk of backsliding, is a lot, particularly in the current fiscal environment, it's really difficult to keep the focus on low-income, underprepared students and what it takes for them to succeed, what kinds of supports they need, what kind of academic supports they need. How do you fund that? How do you accelerate it? How do you create the state capacity to take what's good and move it faster across the state? All those issues, I think, are really, really challenging. We're right to raise the bar. We're right to make the 4-year graduation rate real and visible and part of accountability systems. But it has to be done carefully, and there has to be ways to think about how you do that and bring all students along as well. Particularly, for last point, if you think about some of the innovations that states are either looking at or legislation that's passed or policies that have been changed that are about accelerating students out of high school into college. Sounds like a good thing, right? The more we can move people faster to where they want to be, the better. But if those policies basically enable those who are already on the college track to move faster and take their money with them in a scholarship to college, what does that mean for those who are left behind? It's like saying that you're going to create an HOV lane just for the fastest cars and call that some kind of an equity policy. You're not. You can't get there from here. So how do we make sure that those kinds of fiscally creative policies are also targeting the achievement gap? So,
Thank you, Rich. I just want to sort of pause for a second and underscore a couple of points that have come up so far. One is, I think that Stan's point, we've gotten a lot of progress on the policy agenda. We haven't yet seen the payoff in results that we've been hoping for, and there's a lot still to do there. Both Stan and Rich have, I think, implicitly reminded us that when we talk about college ready, college does not just mean 4-year colleges. They both talked an awful lot about community colleges playing a very important role in this, so we should keep in mind that though the image of college is 4 years, ivy-colored walls, that's not the reality that we're talking about. Lillian has pointed out that the policy set just for the K-12 level is pretty complicated and can only be carried out in collaboration with higher ed. You can't aim at college readiness if you don't have the higher ed folks being clear about what their expectations are. One of the other threads that's run through everybody's comments is implementation matters a whole lot. And implementation happens a whole lot more at the local level on the ground than it does at the state level. So I'd like to now shift the conversation a bit, starting with Kaya Henderson, who's the CEO of the DC Public Schools, a big job and one that gets, in this town at least, an awful lot of attention. So I don't know who's running the schools this morning, but we're glad that you're here with us, and sort of your thoughts about, as you think about implementation in particular, what do we absolutely have to get right, to make this whole idea of college and career readiness work? On the ground, what do we really have to make sure we get right?
Yeah, so I think as we know with everything, the devil is in the details. And we speak and we think a lot about policies without having a clear idea of how this stuff filters down to the people who actually have to implement the work, those being our frontline teachers and principals. I think what we've learned as we have undertaken the implementation of the Common Core, one of the things about DC Public Schools is while we have focused over the last few years on standards and on assessments, we didn't focus too much on curriculum. And so the Common Core presented a great opportunity for us to really approach the curriculum question with gusto. And we've moved forward on a 3-year academic plan, this year being the first year of implementing a curriculum that's aligned to the Common Core literacy work in grades 2 through 12. And what we've realized is we have to spend a lot of time with our principals and with our teachers, helping them understand what the Common Core is, how it's different from the work that we've done before, what it means to them on a day-to-day basis. And literally, we started these conversations in February of this past year. At every monthly professional development, we dug very deeply into what the Common Core looks like and how our new curriculum would be very different from the work that they've done before. It meant spending a lot of time and money on professional development. We spent 2 weeks with our principals this summer. When we said to our principals, so we're having a summer leadership academy that's going to be 2 weeks, of course, you got, oh, my vacation, and no, and this is not how we usually do things. But our principals have said to us as a result of this in-depth experience that they feel more prepared to implement, that they feel more prepared to actually help teachers implement. We spent a week with teachers before school started, and what was critically important as we learned from our teachers, listening to them through the spring, was don't drop this stuff on us in August and expect us to implement. And so we made a commitment to ensuring that our teachers had the information and the materials that they needed in June before they left. What we were able to do was unleash a bunch of professional learning communities over the summer where people had time to really dig into this work. And I think that it's causing us then to rethink how we use our resources, how we use our time, how we use technology. And literally teachers are coming at this work from a completely different perspective because we've spent the time professionally developing them. I think the other piece that we are thinking about very critically is we are all on the supply side of education in terms of delivering to clients. Part of the work that's also really important is the demand side, helping our parents understand what it is we're requiring of our students, why we're requiring this of our students, and helping them to become advocates. For parents, high school graduation was a bar that meant something. And what we've said is, it doesn't mean what it used to mean. Well, we haven't explained to parents why. We haven't explained to them what they should be looking for in terms of judging whether or not their children are being successful in high school. And that's a powerful group that if, rallying in the streets demanding the kinds of outcomes that we are looking for on the supply side can actually help take us a little further. So we're trying to figure out how we educate parents around the Common Core, how they get a full understanding of what college and career ready means, because previously a high school graduation meant it and now it doesn't. And so those are some of the on-the-ground things that we're grappling with.
So that, Kai, I just want to say, Achieve doesn't normally work very closely with local districts, right? We do states, we're all about states. But as I listen to you talk about the challenges of educating parents about what are the expectations for earning a diploma, why it's different now than it was before, how do you communicate that to parents? We've been spending a fair amount of time on that. This is an offer to come see if we can both help you and learn from you on that, and whatever we learn, we'll share with everyone else, because I think everyone in this room faces a challenge of figuring out how to communicate with parents in ways that create the demand for excellence that is so often missing. To my Achieve colleagues, I promise I won't keep making sort of unplanned offers of help, but every now and then you just can't pass one up. Mike, you've been watching urban districts, watching and working with urban districts for a long time. So as you see what they're doing on Common Core, but more generally on this college and career readiness agenda, what do you think is most essential to get accomplished in the next several years? What do we absolutely have to do if this whole effort's going to succeed?
Well, that's a big question. First of all, let me just thank you and thank Achieve for all of the great work that you've done, and also for the partnership between the Great City Schools and Achieve. While you work mostly with states, we work mostly with cities, and in many ways serve a little bit of the same role with the cities as you serve with the states. And your point about getting in and taking a look at the DC schools is kind of a case in point. We recently did some of that at Kaya's request, and the DC schools have really gotten off to a very strong start on the implementation of the Common Core in detailed ways that I think would be useful to other school districts and states across the country. Before I answer your question about going forward, let me revisit your initial question about lessons learned. And as I kind of look back over the last 5 or 6 years, unfortunately at this point I could look back far longer than that, but just looking at the Common Core and the college and career readiness agenda over the last couple of years, it's really clear to me that we've learned once more the power of a really good idea, and what happens when critical actors at the state level, at the city level, at the university level, at the foundation level, and with the interest groups, right and left, all coalesce around that powerful idea. I think the other part of that, if I could call it the Cialis rule, and that is...
Go ahead, let's hear this. Should we all be sitting in bathtubs up here?
When the moment is right. And I think there was a national consensus that started to build some 5 or 6 years ago about how the individual state standards had not done the job for us as a nation that we really needed. And there was a coalescing of interest and agreement and consensus about what we needed to do to move forward. And that moment was right, and the actors were in place to carry it forward, and in some ways we were all in the same bathtub together. I'm not going to carry that.
Block that metaphor.
The other lesson that I think that we might have learned or relearned, and even though we haven't produced results just yet, I think what we may have learned is that in order to get results for the nation, that we had to act at scale in order to get results at scale. that we couldn't any longer do the school by school, program by program, district by district, state by state kind of work that had really marked the education reform movement up to this point, that we had to act at a broader scale with a broader set of definitions and purpose if we were going to make a big difference. Now, moving forward, I have to say I am enormously optimistic, in part not only because of what how the agenda has been defined, but just watching my own cities and working with my own cities. The energy, the enthusiasm, the commitment to this agenda is something that I have never seen in the 35 or so years that I've been doing this work. About 85 to 90% of the cities have already begun implementing the Common Core or some part of the college and career readiness agenda. A lot of it is phase-in work. It's going to take a long time, and I think if looking forward, if I would ask, if there's anything I would ask of the states, it would be to give us the time, the space, the patience, the support that local communities need in order to implement this, because I think trying to implement something as broad and as profound as this is going to take us a fairly long time to pursue. Now, there are other kind of more technical things that I could ask of the states in terms of curriculum support, support on materials, support on professional development, and the like. One that kind of stands out, particularly as I look forward to the implementation of the assessments, is around the issue of technology. And that is, with so many of our districts never having implemented a technology-driven assessment system before, we're going to have to start thinking about the technology that we need to invest in time for the tests, the rollout of the tests and their implementation. But we don't have a clear sense of what kinds of technology we ought to be investing in order to be ready. And that is one thing that I think the Achieve and other organizations could help us on.
So thank you, Mike, for that. A couple of quick things. One is stay a couple of days. We have a Park Institute meeting. We'll be talking about the common assessments. And actually, the technology needs of local districts is a serious topic that Park is addressing, and I'm sure, in fact, we're collaborating on this. Smarter Balance is addressing as well. And I think both assessment consortia recognize the need to, as quickly as possible, define the specs for the sort of end user delivery mechanisms so that as districts begin to make or continue to make investments in technology, they can know with confidence that they're investing in things that will also enable them to deliver the assessment. So that's, I know for both consortia, that's a big topic of conversation. Lillian, I want to bring this back to you for a second, because one of the things Mike said he needs from states is time and patience. So how patient are you? How much time can you give districts?
Wow. So we are working let me answer it this way. I always I hear what people are saying about time, because we don't want to do it, we want to do it well. And at the same time, we have children who are sitting in those seats in those classrooms every day for whom we have got to deliver some really profound services in a very rigorous and specific way. So what we're doing in the state of Delaware is a lot of what you've suggested. And number one is a communication piece. I think that's the biggest piece around some of this work, is a lot of great work is going on, and we know it internally, and we have our heads in the sand, and we're not coming up to tell parents and business leaders and others about it. The good place we are in Delaware is our business community has been at the table since day one. And so we have those folks as vehicles, ambassadors, helping us tell the story, but communication is key. When I sit and speak with people, they say, and I talk to them, I'm really excited about all the work that's going on around policy and policy implementation. For those of you who don't know Delaware, everything is done through relationships. Nothing is done without everybody being at the table making a decision. So the internal constituents are well grounded in it, and so is our business community. It's just mom and dad who go to work every day and send their kids off to us and expect us to do the right thing. We are not educating as profoundly as we should. So I think what we will do is help districts and schools communicate that, but slowing down is a little bit of a concern for me. What we've done over the last summer is we took the draft, even before the Common Core standards, ELA and math, were published in final draft. We started working with our districts statewide. Every district sent their core teachers, and we started reconfiguring our grade level expectations based on the Common Core standards. When we put in our new computer adaptive assessment across the state, we already also started aligning with the Common Core standards and the items that were going to be in there. But we also did another thing that I heard early on. We, as we moved to a new assessment, took the proficiency rates from our old assessment, which was a one-time, one-year thing, and we triangulated that with the scores that we got from there, NAEP and PISA, so that when we set our new standards, it was a combination of all of the global kinds of pressure that our children have to succeed. One more thing I wanted to say, and then I'll stop talking. We at the state, and so I'm putting a little bit of pressure on my colleagues, they'll probably never forgive me for that, put into our budget, because our General Assembly and our governor are very good to us, some support for technology. Because we knew that our local districts, we don't have a budget item in our state for technology at the local level, so if they have aggressive technology plans, they're doing that through referenda, through local referenda. We had a survey of our entire state, every district completed, so we knew what their technology capabilities were. And we're not just talking about hardware, we're talking about infrastructure. I mean, some of our rural districts, we couldn't even get the lines. I mean, we had to do some pretty aggressive work over time. So that one is huge, the technology, and so we bought computers where they needed them because it's all computer adaptive, but we really do need to think about other things than just getting the computer in there. Do they have the wiring? Do they have the infrastructure to live through these computer adaptive assessments? So it's a short story. I will try. We are trying very hard to work with our folks and bring them in. And we want to do it right, but we want to do it. And so slowing down to some degree is relative, and we'll have to figure out what that means as we give support. And then number two is communication with everyone, that this is aggressive change for a reason. As we heard from the two panelists, we've put all these policies in place, we've started to roll them out, and we still have our children showing up at college where 60 to 90% of them are in remedial courses. So we want to be helpful, but there is a sense of urgency about it.
Thanks, Lillian. Mike, and then Kyle, looked like you wanted to
I just
respond.
wanted to pick up on this speed issue.
Okay.
And clarify, I certainly feel the same sense of urgency that Lillian and others in the room do, and all of our cities, of course, feel the sense of urgency. We know that we are behind, and we know we've got a lot of work to catch up with national averages and to make sure that all of our kids are achieving at the level that the Common Core and other college and career readiness standards expect. At the same time, I'm also cognizant of the fact that for political and other reasons, people will be really quite quick to say that they have now fully implemented the Common Core when we know that's not true.
No, that's not true.
And I don't want that sense of needing to claim or be the first to claim that you were the first out of the box to implement the Common Core undercut how complicated this is going to be and how deep the implementation needs to go in order for it to be successful.
Thank you. So as a reminder, we are going to, there are lots of pressures to move quickly. We'll have tests coming out in 2014, 2015 that will measure against the standards. And among the communications challenges we all face is helping parents, the public, the business community, and others understand that the implementation and change brought about by the Common Core is going to be ongoing. It is not going to get done once and for all in 2014, 2015. I want to, we have just a few more minutes left in this. I think we could keep this conversation going for hours, but I'd rather provide an opportunity for people sitting here, if you've got questions or comments or reactions you want to make to any of the comments that any of the panelists made. We've got some time left to call on people. If you have things you want to say, this would be a good time to raise your hand, and we'll get a mic over to you. Hopefully it'll be one that works, and we'll keep the conversation going. If you could introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks. My name is State Senator Ed Maloney from Chicago. Stan referenced city colleges in Chicago where they have a 90% remedial need. And my question is for the lady from Delaware. When you implemented this Algebra 2 high school graduation requirement, I mean, how do you get there when we're looking at a system in Chicago that has a over 40% high school dropout rate, kids coming into 9th grade, tremendously deficient in math? How do you get to that Algebra 2 benchmark for them to be college ready?
Thank you, thank you for a great question, and it really does speak to Mike Casserly's point. Let me reiterate that will begin with the class of 12-13, which will be next year's freshmen, and will be a graduation requirement for 16. In the meantime, a part of our reform focuses on the middle school, 6 through 8, and what is happening there with instructional interventions and readiness, so that when they get to high school, because we always talk about getting to high school and being ready for college, if they walk into the 9th grade not ready for high school, dropout rates, attendance, discipline, the whole thing kicks in. So we have, to the point that was made by my colleagues here, been very deliberate and thoughtful about knowing that we want that to be the end game. But to Mike's point, it's just not going to magically happen in 2014. So we kind of began with the end in mind. If we want this to be a graduation requirement for 2016, what do we do in the meantime to prepare those kids to get to that point?
Okay, so the communication piece goes beyond community college, high school, is going back into the elementary school.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Stan, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, Senator, I think that's a great question, and actually, I'm going to volunteer at Achieve. Several years ago, when the high school dropout issue was pretty hot across the country, Achieve really started a dual agenda to address the high school dropout issue simultaneously with the standards and the achievement movement. So I'm sure they'd be happy to help to help you all in Illinois with this issue, because yes, there's this dichotomy of saying, well, we want to get these kids back in school, and at the same time not only get them back but have them take Algebra 2, and that's a huge leap. And so it's a very important question. The high school dropout issue is very real across this country still, and we can't forget that. And it's going to take some thoughtful strategies to do that. So again, that's part of some of the work that Achieve's done that's still fresh and still important.
Thank you, Stan. By the way, that is work that Achieve and Jobs for the Future did together. And the dual agenda idea that Stan raised was the idea that we have to both raise graduation requirements and, raise graduation standards and raise graduation rates at the same time. We can't just do one and not the other. We've got to work on both at the same time, and that does make it particularly challenging. And most of the solutions we learned about had to do with both early interventions and supports, and lots of attention to data and the progress that students are making through high school, so that you reach out to kids before they drop out and well before they drop out and begin to provide the supports that they need. We have 1 minute for we have a minute for one question, or one question? one question and answer. So another question.
If not, I would like to pick up.
We have some up here. Go ahead.
I would just like to pick up on something. In working with Achieve, one of the things that came to the forefront was individual learning plans. And in Delaware, we have incorporated success plans. By the end of this year, every student 8th through 12th grade will have a success plan. And to Mike's point, annually, it is configured with the student, the parent, the counselor, and another faculty member, and we look at their data year over year to see if they're on track, if they're off track, and how we intervene. So that was work that we did with Achieve that has proven very fruitful in making sure we individualize.
Great. Thank you.
Just quickly,
Okay.
to the comment around asking for states' assistance and implementation, I think there's a raging debate over the role of standardized testing in education that we local districts need some help with. As we move towards the park, as we move towards computer adaptive testing, we have to help people understand that standardized testing has been here forever, will likely be here forever, and the culture around it has morphed into something I think that we're not happy with, but we have to take pains then to help people understand how moving towards the park, we expect the culture around assessment to change.
Very good point. Thank you.
Yeah, well,
Mike, and then we'll close this up.
Yeah, one last quick point that I would raise with the states that they ought to consider. I know the Department of Education hasn't yet announced its program for waiver requests from the states. But when it comes, I would hope as many states as possible request those waivers, because particularly if they involve waivers of your 20% supplemental education services requirement. This is really tying up huge amounts of money that could be spent on after-school and tutorial programs to help kids meet the Common Core. And I'd hope as many states as possible took advantage of that program from the Department of Education to help us move the agenda forward.
Great, thank you, Mike. I'm going to close out this session. I want to talk about what's coming next, and then I will ask you to thank our panelists for getting us off to a great start in this discussion. As soon as we're done, we have a 15-minute break. There'll be refreshments in the hall. There are 4 breakout sessions, concurrent sessions, that are on the agenda next. One is about next generation science standards. One is about college and career-ready accountability. One is about the impact of advanced course taking on post-secondary remediation. Got a little bit of a preview of that topic here. And a 4th one on revamping developmental education. So these are all issues that grow out of the discussion, the work that you've been doing and the discussions that we've been having, and there'll be an opportunity for cross-state sharing and to get into these sessions in a bit more detail. When you leave here, there'll be staff available in the hallway to assist you in locating the room for the session you want to attend. And when the sessions are over, please be back in this room promptly at 11, and we will have what I think promises to be a rather lively discussion on career readiness, one of the issues that we've all identified as needing further attention. So please join me in thanking the panel for getting us off to a great start.